never had Lorna walk out just when I was starting. I thought you had enough. I thought you had awakened and that was it. No more of this stuff. So we're in week 4 of our 12-week study. We began developing an understanding of the only meditation method the Buddha ever taught, Jhana meditation. And then the next week we looked at the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where the beginning of that sutta is the Buddha's instructions for what to do during jhana meditation. Last week we looked at the 4 noble truths. The context for everything the Buddha taught is 4 noble truths. And this week and the next 2 weeks we're going to look at the 4th noble truth, or the truth of the path leading to the cessation of ignorance, the Eightfold Path. We begin with the Eightfold Path is often characterized, even by the Buddha himself, as a path of deepening or heightened wisdom, deepening or heightened virtue, or deepening or heightened concentration. And so the first 2 factors, the factors that contribute to deepening wisdom, are right view and right intention. How many of you, well, I don't have to ask you every time, but you all read the chapter and you all did your writing homework. But you don't have to send the homework to me if you don't want to. You can bring it to class, and that's the point. So we reviewed the first half of this on Saturday. So I'm starting right about in the middle. Frank, I'm at 51%, and I'm going to start with the line, wrong view is caused by ignorance, if you can find that. I know you like to read along. It should be just before the middle of the book, whatever that is. Everybody have it? Anybody have it?
Do you know what page?
No, I only have percentage on the Kindle.
Is it in right intention?
It's right where I left off on Saturday. It begins with wrong view is caused by ignorance, right view, etc. I'm trying to find something else that would define it better. I don't think it's into right intention. All right, well, I'm going to start. So, now I lost my place. Wrong view is caused by ignorance. Right view is an expression of wisdom and understanding. The Buddha explains how right effort and right mindfulness directly contribute to developing wisdom. The Buddha's words. This is the Buddha's describing what we do in Dhamma practice. One tries to abandon wrong view and to enter into right view. This is one's right effort. What was that, Michael?
Sorry, Brian, I mean to.
That's okay.
It's page 112.
Beautiful, thank you. One tries to abandon wrong view and to enter into right view. Notice there's no absolute in that declaration. The Buddha say we try. This is Dhamma practice is a practice. We're trying to do it. He's immediately saying, in his words, in his way, be gentle with yourself, because it's an ongoing process. We had a good talk with Dethane yesterday about using that word, process. So Dhamma practice is trying to. In order to try to abandon wrong view, we have to have a structure, a framework to recognize what is wrong view. And again, there's the Eightfold Path. One tries to abandon wrong view and enter into right view. This is one's right effort. It's 3 factors of the path in that one sentence. The Buddha continues. One is mindful, holding in mind. This is my practice right now. I am mindful. I'm holding in mind the framework for recognizing wrong view. One is mindful to abandon wrong view and to enter and remain in right view. This is one's right mindfulness. So all the modern applications of mindfulness aside, they have nothing to do with what the Buddha just states. Mindfulness, right mindfulness, is to be mindful to abandon wrong view and enter and remain in right view. This is one's right mindfulness. The Buddha continues, thus these 3 qualities, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness, run and circle around right view, meaning they're all mutually supportive. They're an aspect of right view. My words. Right view supports and informs all of the components of the Eightfold Path. Having engaged with the Four Noble Truths, right view brings wisdom to a mind previously stuck in ignorance and confusion. That makes sense based on what the Buddha just taught us, doesn't it? The consequences of wrong view, the Buddha's words. In a person of wrong view, wrong resolve, or wrong intention, we had a discussion about using the word resolve or intention. They're interchangeable as far as the Dhamma is concerned. Wrong resolve and wrong intention comes into being. In a person of wrong view, wrong intention comes into being. And what is wrong intention as it relates to an unawakened human being rooted in ignorance? Wrong intention is the intention to maintain that ignorance, even though it's not seen. What I've recognized through Dhamma practice and teaching and developing myself is a very powerful, but very, very subtle strategies that we all employ to continue to ignore our own ignorance. It's the basic need of a mind rooted in ignorance to find distraction wherever it can, especially within something that might be called Buddhist practice or so-called spiritual practice or New Age philosophy or all of that. If it's not framed by the Eightfold Path as the Buddha just described it, it's simply another distraction, no matter what label you might put on it, no matter what how wholesome the behavior might be, meaning it's not directly hurting yourself or others. It is in that way that it's distracting you from developing understanding of the truth. And that's why I talk about it often, and that's why the Buddha points it out continually. We had a brief discussion on the way down here. The Buddha didn't really awaken to what it is as much as he awakened to what it isn't. And then he developed a practice so that we could all understand what it is, what reality is. He awakened to all the things that did not contribute to his awakening. Remember the Nagara Sutta. And then after that process that he went through himself and is describing to us here, then he was able to develop an Eightfold Path and in essence live within the framework of that Eightfold Path for the final 45 years of his life. He maintained right view moment by moment. In a person of wrong resolve or wrong intention, wrong speech. We're getting into the virtuous factors of the Eightfold Path. If we're rooted in wrong intention, we can't hope to resolve wrong speech. In a person of wrong speech, wrong action. And we all know that. How often do our actions follow our speech, especially if it's a speech we're telling ourselves? If that speech is wrong speech, we're actually motivating ourselves to wrong action by the things we're telling ourselves. And that can be very obvious and it can be very, very subtle. But it all continues ignorance. In a person of wrong action, wrong livelihood. That just follows. In a person of wrong livelihood, wrong effort. Notice how this just continues to take us further and further away from wisdom as we're maintaining our ignorance. In a person of wrong effort, wrong mindfulness. And look at all the things that we hold in mind today. And just holding in mind, again, just to reiterate what I said earlier, just holding in mind something that the world or we might see or our friends see as a wholesome practice does not necessarily make it a wise practice. If it's a distraction away from awakening, no matter how harmless it might be, it's harmful at the most debilitating level. And it's even more harmful because we don't notice it, because we don't recognize it, because it might be accepted by many, many, many people. The foremost form of modern Buddhism is a practice that is strictly based on a mantra that if you say the mantra long enough, often enough, really continuously, and if it's on your lips when you die, that's the criteria, then you'll be taken to a Buddhist type of heaven. Of course, the Buddha never taught anything like that. I'm not putting that practice down. I'm making the point that just because most of the Buddhist practitioners today are practicing that form of Buddhism, does it make it Buddhism, does it? Or does it make what the Buddha taught anyway? In a person of wrong mindfulness, if we're holding in mind things that have nothing to do with the Dhamma, wrong concentration follows. In a person of wrong concentration, wrong knowledge. In a person of wrong knowledge, wrong release, meaning there is no release from ignorance. The Buddha is describing that when we deviate from Eightfold Path and the framework contained in the first two factors of right view and right intention, to use a phrase, all is lost. We're simply not practicing the Dhamma. And if we're not practicing the Dhamma, we shouldn't expect results from the Dhamma, should we? The Buddha continues, this is how from wrongness comes failure, not success. And again, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Dethane, it might have been someone else, talking about the reference to right view, right intention, right speech, etc., implying wrong speech, wrong intention, etc., and using those words because they have a moral connotation, and maybe there's a better way to express that. And we got into some of the Pali language that relates to right and wrong. But as English-speaking people, practicing a Dhamma that is so important to understand what it is as it is to understand what it isn't, right and wrong gets right to the point, doesn't it? We could use the words skillful or unskillful, excuse me, or appropriate and inappropriate. And I remember going through this in my head many years ago, how to teach this. And one of the things I settled on was whatever I say, I better be consistent, because that's how the Buddha's Dhamma is most useful. So right speech, et cetera, is the words we use to describe what Dhamma practice is. And the wrong side of that is what we avoid or abandon. And it's just that simple. Again, there's nothing moral or ethical about it as far as Dhamma practice. It's either Dhamma practice or it isn't. This is from the Buddha's words. This is how from wrongness comes failure, not success. My words, holding wrong views can never lead to right view and liberation. All views born of ignorance are wrong views and are to be recognized and abandoned. There's no value in them. There's nothing contributory towards awakening and maintaining any view that is not rooted in a right view. Now we're getting into right intention. Right intention is having the intention to abandon all views and abandon all that would continue ignorance and success. And we know what it is because it follows from the teachings on right view. What are we generating the intention to abandon? All wrong views. Right intention is the intention to abandon all clinging and craving. And I really should say there, and if I ever get around to rewriting this, all clinging and craving ultimately to views, because it's not objects and people that we cling to. Ultimately, it's the views that we've developed rooted in ignorance that we cling mostly to. Right intention is also included as the second factor of the Eightfold Path, as it leads directly to the development of the virtuous factors of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So I make the strong determination that my understanding is lacking wisdom of Four Noble Truths. That's my entry point into the Dhamma. And because I understand enough about the Dhamma to commit to taking true refuge in the Dhamma, meaning I understand that a human being actually did this, that human being left his Dhamma, that the Dhamma is still available, and that I have the support of a well-focused Sangha. Those three things in place, I can now move forward in my Dhamma practice because I've established the foundation for a Dhamma practice. Knowing that a teacher actually taught it, a human being, his teachings are still here, and we have the support of each other, of a well-focused Sangha.
John, doesn't it really just establish the long haul of your practice without that foundation, to think that you can do it without any part of that?
Yes.
It's because it's a long haul. It's a lifetime pursuit.
Yep. And thank you. It does take that level of commitment to overcome a self-referential ego's personality clinging to ignorant views, because it's a difficult point to teach, because on one hand, the clinging that a mind rooted in ignorance, the powerful clinging that it has is that, and it seems so substantial. To many of us, it seems almost impossible at times to let go of all these views. But the truth of the matter, the reality of it is, those views are like foam on the water. There's no power that any view has over me except the power that I give it by clinging to it. That's it. There's no other power that that any thought, any idea has in the world, except the power that I give it. I could have millions and millions of people that agree on the same thing that I believe in, that I'm holding in mind, that I'm mindful of. But that doesn't give it additional power. It simply means that I've established it in a distributed way that's going to make it much more difficult for me to let go of. That's why the Buddha taught over and over again. An aspect of Dhamma practice is to look at your associations, not because we're supposed to decide, well, this association is a good person and that association is a bad person. It's because clinging to other people that are maintaining the same ignorance that you are will make it impossible to abandon it. It's just too strong. Even though, as I just said, there's no real power behind it. There's no real energy except the energy that I give it. And that relates to the debilitating nature of stress. It's not an abstract notion that stress or dukkha contributes to disease and disease, real disease in my body. We've proven that. And the reason why it happens is because of the energy that it saps to maintain stress, to maintain dukkha. We all know that. We all feel much worse at the end of a so-called tough day, don't we? Because it saps our strength to maintain and live within that framework of dukkha. Because it takes so much energy to do it. Again, these are all practical teachings, and this is what the Buddha is really pointing out. Stop putting that energy into it. Through right view and right intention, I can begin the process of withdrawing mindfully, consciously, withdrawing energy from all the things that I thought were true about myself, all the things that I thought I needed to be happy, all the things I thought I needed to avoid. Because the Buddha taught, birth is suffering, birth is dukkha. Having a human life is prone to suffering. Sickness is suffering. Aging is suffering, death is suffering. But it's only suffering when I'm preoccupied and distracted by those things, isn't it? Even aging. Yes, Dora.
Associations, what are you meaning by that, really? Are you meaning just people, or are you meaning the associations we make in our minds that we keep going to day after day after day?
Yes.
It's that repetitive association of our thinking.
Yes. Association ultimately is another word for clinging to my views. Yeah. And so we naturally associate with people that have similar views. I'm not going to get into it, but politics is such a good example of that today, isn't it? Yeah. Because we're so divided. From my view is I'm a Democrat, so all the Democrats are right and all the Republicans are awful. And if I'm a Republican, I feel the same way about Democrats. Of course, they're both wrong, but it's just ridiculous. But we take on those positions because of our associations. And look, again, using the example of politics, look how it keeps feeding itself. Look how the initial hatred of the other keeps feeding the hatred of your own belief system. It's just a perfect example of conditioned associated thinking is that way. So it's a great question. But we also, we associate with all kinds of, years ago, and just as an example, an association of mine was pop-off vodka, or the cheapest ShopRite was often cheaper, so that was really my association. The point is that I was clinging to what I associated with. And even then, I associated with people that were like me. I didn't hang around with people that didn't drink and drug like me. No addict really does, do they? They might live in the world. But so you want to associate with people. And it's the same thing is within Dhamma practice. And it should be seen that way. One of the reasons why this Sangha is so remarkable is because we are all associated with the Dhamma. That's the foundation for why we come together. We're not looking for a new agey experience or to talk about the latest poem from some so-called Buddhist teacher. We're here to practice what the Buddha's teaching right here, to practice the Dhamma. And it works. It's effective in that way. Thank you for the question. Along with my words, along with the intention to abandon clinging and craving, right intention is also the intention to abandon ill will and all harmful thoughts, words, and deeds, which again leads directly to the virtuous factors of the Eightfold Path. And how do I know that I still have a little ways to go? It is through those virtuous factors, because that's where my thinking will become most obvious to me, in my thoughts, words, and deeds. How else could that be? Except in my thoughts, words, and deeds would I be able to recognize my own ignorance. And so the Buddha gave us a framework, starting with right view, describing what that is, moving into right intention, leading into what we're going to study next week. Now you can look at your behavior from this right framework. Notice what's coming out of your mouth. Notice what is motivating your actions. Notice your actions in making a living. And weigh it against what we now know is right view and right intention. Continue. And so it says intention to abandon ill will and all harmful thoughts, words, and deeds. Anytime that I find myself upset with someone to the point that I may not recognize this at the moment, that I need that person to be different in this moment, I'm engaged in wrong view and everything that follows from that wrong view, including the cortisol, the stress that I just released in my body, that's literally eating away at my organs. If I keep doing it, we give ourselves ulcers. People that talk about that worry all that they get old. I mean, there's other reasons for that. There's bacterial reasons. But just to make the point that we stress ourselves into disease because we don't understand what we're doing anymore. When we can extricate ourselves from those associations and clinging to those wrong views, we develop what the Buddha teaches as an awakened mind, a mind of calm and peace. And no matter what situation we're in, an awakened human being is able to maintain that calm and peaceful mind simply because they're not falling into the trap of, in this moment, reacting to and falling into the trap of wrong speech, wrong action, or even taking some liberties with right livelihood. I'll probably talk about this next week. In fact, I know it, but I just want to touch on it now. When I first came through the Eightfold Path, and I got to this third of the virtuous factors, right livelihood, it confused me because I'm thinking, doesn't right speech and right action cover right livelihood? Isn't that enough? Why do I need to be concerned about it? So I read a little bit more in the suttas, and I realized that what the Buddha is teaching in right livelihood is that otherwise good and honest people that are practicing right speech and right intention, when it came time to put food on the table for baby, they might compromise themselves. And even in that situation, if we're going to be wise Dhamma practitioners, we'll recognize it. It still might mean that the baby needs a bowl of soup, and I still might do it, but I'll understand that I'm doing it. That's the kind of purity that the Buddha is teaching. So that's why right livelihood is there, and it follows right speech and right action. Right view initially brings a recognition of wrong views. Due to strong mental fabrications or conditioned thinking that have developed from wrong view, recognition alone is not enough to gain liberation and freedom from stress. It's just the beginning. I think I mentioned this a few times. Was it you, Bonnie, that mentioned you knew Anthony DeMello? Anthony DeMello was a good writer. Many years ago, he wrote a book called Awareness. And I remember one line in that book. He said, awareness isn't change, but awareness is the power to change. The Buddha's saying the same thing, using the word mindfulness. Mindfulness itself isn't change, but right mindfulness is the power to change. Holding in mind the things that cause us distress, confusion, deluded thinking, greed, and aversion, and the things to hold in mind that deliver liberation and freedom, framed by the Eightfold Path. Right, my words, right intention. Holding the firm intention to abandon craving and clinging and develop the experience of the cessation of suffering strengthens right view. Meaning in this moment, if I feel I've gotten off the path, I can always fall back on right view and regenerate that right intention and regenerate in this moment. It's my intention to recognize and abandon all views ignorant of Four Noble Truths. And so that's simply another way, not quite a shortcut of reminding ourselves in this moment, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. It's the same thing that we're doing and training ourselves to stop taking things, anything, personally, because there is nothing personal and nothing can be personal. Again, we understand that on a much deeper level because of that 36 weeks we spent on Vipassana, true Vipassana. Right intention can be seen as an expression of right view. The entire transformative nature of the Dhamma arises from right intention. The entire transformative nature of the Dhamma arises from right intention. If we're lacking that, remember years ago I had a discussion with a friend of mine, he still is, even though I haven't seen him in years. He said intention has nothing to do with the Buddha's Dhamma. Of course, he was practicing a type of Buddhism that doesn't have intention. Intention is completely meaningless. But if my intention is, if my purpose is to recognize and abandon wrong views, then that needs to be my intention, isn't it? Because if my intention is to find liberation in myself through 108,000 prostrations, which is taught in in the lineage that I took vows in, then right intention it doesn't mean anything. Then I need the intention not to recognize and abandon craving and clinging and ignorant views. I need the intention to do 108,000 vows. But the 108,000 vows aren't going to give me any understanding at all, are they? You're just going to give me plywood palms. Frank.
This is kind of what I was talking about last week when I was recognizing that I'm caught up in craving and clinging, wanting things to be different than what they are. So then what do I do with that information? And I think right intention, when it's informed from right view, tells you what to do.
Yes.
It gives you the motive
Yes.
on what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to renunciate and abandon craving and clinging. You're supposed to not have anger or ill will. So then you have to have some love and kindness. And then you're not supposed to have you're supposed to practice harmlessness. And that's where, kindness comes in.
Yeah, that is, thank you, Frank. What Frank is describing, and I've yet to say it, so you've inspired a first saying from me. The Eightfold Path is a framework for Dhamma practice. Right intention is a framework for the Eightfold Path. It's what keeps us focused, no matter what. Frank described it beautifully. I should leave it at that. Let Frank's explanation be the defining characteristic. Thanks, Frank. Let me read this line again. The entire transformative nature of the Dhamma arises from right intention. Being mindful of right intention brings clarity to the destructiveness of reactive thoughts, words, and deeds caused by ignorance. And what I mean by that is when we're gently mindful of what's occurring within the framework of the Eightfold Path, we don't beat ourselves up for recognizing ignorance in that moment. And this is a key part of developing the Dhamma. Is, again, another way of saying that is to be gentle with ourselves. Through right intention, I understand that this is something that I choose to do. Nobody's making me do it. I'm not doing it because that crazy old bald guy told me to do it for a week. I'm doing it because I understand, because I've taken true refuge in the Buddha, his Dhamma, and a well-focused Sangha. This is what we do as Dhamma practitioners. As individual Dhamma practitioners. We don't do it because I say it, because the Buddha says it, or because everybody else in your Sangha is doing it. That's just the support to continue and to understand what you're going through. But the motivation comes from within yourself and being mindful of right intention in this moment. Without right intention, the virtuous and concentration factors of the path cannot be developed. The ego self has much too invested in wrong views to put all wrong views aside without the strong resolve of right intention. The impermanent ego personality will not yield to wrong views, will not yield if wrong views are not abandoned and right views developed. Holding the intention to abandon all wrong views naturally brings the mind to the virtuous and concentration factors of the Eightfold Path that we'll get into next week. Holding the intention to abandon all clinging and craving and to abandon all ill will and harmful thoughts, words, and deeds begins to diminish the effects that occur as a result of strong attachment to self. Right view is also called right thinking and right perspective. Again, just different words meaning the same thing. It is wrong thinking that binds impermanent views to a temporary ego personality. It is wrong thinking that develops craving from a temporary ego personality. Clinging and craving arise from a misunderstanding of what a self and how a self has arisen. Again, that's one of the things that we learned through that 36-week study is how a self arises and how it becomes ignorant. We learn that every human being can only describe themselves accurately as having 6 properties. The 4 properties, earth, wind, fire, and water, the 5th property of the space property, and that 6th property of thinking or consciousness. And if that consciousness that is part of every human being is rooted in ignorance of 4 noble truths, then what that six property person would manifest in the world can only be ignorant. But that very same 6 property person within the Eightfold Path can develop as an awakened six-property person. The same thing, and I'm saying that again in a way I don't know that I've ever said it that way, is awakening occurs, wisdom occurs or is developed in the same mind as a mind that is rooted in ignorance and prone to greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. It's such an important point. We're not trying to escape something. I'm not trying to fix something that's broken within me. I'm not trying to acquire something that, if I do everything right, will be bestowed on me. I'm trying to change my view from a wrong view to a right view. There's nothing magical, mystical, esoteric at all about going from right view to wrong view, except the practical miracle is that it works. There's no miracle about it, is there? It just works. And it's a completely different way of looking at awakening from a realistic perspective. In other words, I'm not trying to continually embellish a self into a better self. I think it was Maxwell Maltz. I might be mixing up with Mr. Abraham. But the term self-actualization was very popular during the 60s and the 70s. But it was, and the teachings were very interesting, and I learned a lot from some of those guys. But ultimately, it was about actualizing a self-referential self. Means it was dukkha actualization is really what it was. All well-intended, but that's the end result of it was. The Buddha realized that anything that enhances a self rooted in ignorance can only be painful. And so he taught, beginning with right view, to abandon all those views, that there is anything of any value in my views rooted in ignorance. And that the only true value in my life, and again, I'm not talking about our friends and our loved ones and our dog and our job and whatever it might be. Those are extraneous. Those aren't noble truths. Those are human truths, part of having a human life prone to suffering. In the framework of the Eightfold Path, I want to awaken. I want to let go of all those views because they're like foam on the water. I'm not letting go of anything of value, no matter how much power there is behind it. And again, I'm saying the same thing a few different ways because that's what right view and right intention is all about. Misunderstanding the nature of self develops an ego personality that suffers in ignorance from birth, sickness, aging, death, and rebirth. And again, I'm not talking about a physical rebirth, giving birth in this moment to another moment rooted in ignorance. That's the only useful teaching on rebirth. It is this personality that the Buddha identifies as anatta. Atta means self, or it can also mean a higher self. Anatta means not self or non-self. This is often misunderstood to imply that awakening is the extinguishing of being. In fact, most of modern Mahayana Buddhism, and even Theravada falls into it inadvertently because of their reliance on the Abhidhamma, is that the ultimate result or ultimate goal is the understanding or the realization of the realm of nothingness or emptiness. And again, the Buddha taught that's true annihilation, isn't it? The Buddha didn't teach how to annihilate a self. He taught how to annihilate, let go of all wrong views of self. What's left? An awakened self. Being a human being is not the enemy, is it? Being a human being is the goal. And so if we start adopting doctrines of fixing a broken self or establishing myself in nothingness or emptiness, what is that? It's a response to self-hatred. What else can it be? Why else would I want to annihilate myself? To me, this is why the Buddha referred to living a life in ignorance as like a living death. And it truly is, because we're not living our lives. Our lives can only be meaningfully experienced if we're present and know how to see what's occurring. It needs both of those components, because we can't not be present for our life in a physical way. We're here, we're living in that. But if my mind is distracting me from the past or the future, meaning what I need in this moment to keep me happy, I'm not living this moment, aren't I? I've literally lost my life. But if I develop concentration and refine mindfulness through right view and right intention and the rest of the Eightfold Path, I'm able to unite my mind and my body, keep it there, and then each and every moment of my life is meaningful. Why? Because I'm actually living it. I don't need something special or extraneous or through acquisition to give my life meaning. My life is meaningful because I'm living it, finally. I'm not living the death of ignorance. I'm living the life of wisdom. Is that clear to everyone?
Yeah.
And that's where we're going with the Dhamma. We're learning how to live moment by moment. Awakening is the extinguishing of an insubstantial, impermanent personality that has arisen from wrong views. It is this personality that is subject to the distraction, confusion, and suffering of stress. Right intention is the intention to abandon all views of an impermanent self so that right view may be developed. And that doesn't imply that there's a permanent self. Impermanence describes the environment in which ignorance and stress or dukkha arises. Impermanence also describes the environment that a self develops ignorance and is subject to the distraction of self. A wrong view of self develops behavior that manifests in non-virtuous ways. If it were not for a confused mind, subject to stress and suffering, subject to stress and strongly committed to maintaining its existence, there would be no need for a path of liberation. We simply would recognize through pain and confusion that what we're doing doesn't work. Let me stop doing it. But because of clinging to what we've associated ourselves with, we can't. We can't simply let it go. You'd think that the first time I woke up with a brutal hangover, that would have been enough. But that was just the beginning. And those that have had addictions that way know how awful it gets, especially to the end. And even at the end, when I knew I was probably going to die by taking another drink, the compulsion was so strong that I took another drink. It seemed reasonable. That's it. When I look back now at that mind, that was the most reasonable thing I could do. Even while I couldn't get myself up. There were times when I couldn't eat for weeks and weeks at end. I literally was incapable of eating, but I could keep drinking. And I thought that that's what I needed to do. Of course it wasn't. But I didn't know any better. I didn't have the right frame of reference. We do that with everything. That's just an extreme example. But we all hold on to views that maintain a life that is at best disappointing at times, and never look at the real reason why we're disappointed, why we're stressed out. And if we don't do that, we never get to the profound realization that I'm stressed out, that I'm disappointed in this moment, not because of what's occurring, because I'm taking it personally, because I'm not seeing what's occurring clearly. As stated previously, once the wisdom of the Four Noble Truths has entered a mind suffering in ignorance, that same mind can now hold the right intention to awaken. The ego personality's strong resistance to letting go of wrong views can only be overcome by the foundation developed initially by right view and right intention. Right view is the entry to Dhamma practice, and right intention sets and holds your direction. I'm going to stop there. There's a little bit more left into that, but I think that makes the point, doesn't it? Very well. Let's go around. We're going to start with Jane. Jane, how are you tonight?
I'm fine, John. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
Well, you always start with me.
Ladies first.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I've been practicing the Dhamma for about a year and a half, and the world hasn't changed that much, and what I do day to day hasn't changed that much. But what has changed is the way I perceive my view of what I am in the world. What I don't have to be the pleaser or the fixer, or it's just what in the moment what I am, and that's brought me a lot of peace. So I'm a work in progress, but I definitely see change.
Yeah. Thank you. Isn't that great? You don't have to be the Jane that didn't work before. You can be this Jane.
Right.
Thank you, Jane. Hello, Thad. Good to see you tonight.
Hello, John. I had a long day at middle school today herding cats, so I'm going to a lot of good stuff here. I'm just going to listen to it.
Wait a minute. You were herding cats?
I'm an art teacher at middle school. I have the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders all day long. I call it herding cats. Yeah.
I'm glad you made it. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Eric, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
I don't think I have anything to add. Good to be here tonight. Good talk.
I'm glad you're here. Frank, is this going to be off-putting if I do this so I can see? Yeah, that's you. At least I can see you
It's good to be
smiling.
here. How you doing, John?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Uh,
I might do that again.
Yeah, it was a great class, and the focal point of right intention was in my mind all week. Like I said, understanding conceptually right view and the Four Noble Truths is one thing, but taking the study of them and putting it into practice and knowing what to do is the task of right intention.
Yeah.
And I got that this week.
Wow.
Like it just, I was feeling really frustrated on what to do with all that information and what direction do I move in. And I read this chapter and I saw the abandoning of craving and clinging. And if I'm craving and clinging onto the things that I think will contribute to my happiness, but it keeps me in ignorance, then letting go of those things can be the hardest task if I don't know how.
Yeah.
And I think right view gives me the perspective, the frame, the lens to see the suffering that craving and clinging is causing, and then letting go of it with no ill will and with no intention to cause harm is freedom.
It's freedom. Yeah.
It releases it all.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Frank. And so you've been through this study 3 or 4 times and read the book a few times. And isn't it interesting how we just keep coming back to it and our understanding deepens? You saw something in there this week that you never saw before.
Slow learner.
And and that's exactly how the Dhamma works. You realize on a much deeper level now how important right intention was. But your initial 4 years ago, however long it's been, your initial right view got you going in this direction, and your initial right intention to simply continue with this and right effort brought you to this place. That's Dhamma practice. That's how it works. So thank you. Good evening, Matt.
John, thank you for the teaching. Great class.
Pleasure.
To be here with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
I'm glad you're here too. Hello, Lorna.
I'll sit in Noble Silence.
Glad you're here. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, John, nice to see you.
I didn't mean that.
How are
I
you?
mean, 2 or 3 minutes we got.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Just wanted to thank everybody for their continued practice and support. And that's all I have to add tonight.
Thank you. I never should have made that remark. Hello, everybody can talk for 20 or 30 minutes if you want. Go ahead. Babble on.
I was looking back the other day on the beginning of my actual practice here, which came a bit later than my actual entry into Sangha. And
we were talking about that.
The change, what triggered it was that I realized that parts of my life that were working at the time that really made sense were right speech and right action and right livelihood too. But it didn't really that realization didn't do anything until I realized that it was the right intention behind it that was really fueling that.
Yeah.
That was what it made it working. And it was just that part of right intention where you intend to be harmless. But once I got into that part, that's when I got to the second part of right intention, which is to have the right views. Then things started really rolling. But you don't really see that you have wrong views until you look at that right intention to be harmless. And you see the times that, you are harmful.
Yeah.
So it's kind of contrary to the flow that we're working with here, but you can probably take any point in the Eightfold Path as your start-off point.
Yeah.
And for me, it was right action, going to right intention, and then finally working on right view.
Yeah. Thank you. And any aspect of the Eightfold Path can be the entry point, and it's different for many people, but most people really begin Dhamma practice with right speech and right action, and that's understandable and probably the way it should be, because that's where, in my words and in my actions, is where my thinking is coming out. It's going to be expressed that way, and it's interesting how we're talking. We're really getting this right intention as a Sangha, because if it was a 7-factored path, it wouldn't work, would it? If it went from right view, okay, right view is that, let's just say dukkha is manufactured. It went from that to, and be mindful of your speech. Well, why? Where's the connection? There is no connection to it. Then it becomes just a so-called religious practice or a moral practice, that I'm engaging right speech, right action, right livelihood, so that I don't hurt people and end up burning in hell for the rest of my days, or whatever it might be. No, this second factor of the Eightfold Path is what the Buddha realized is absolutely necessary if we're going to change. We have to first generate that intention to change. And that's why it's there. Thank you. Hello, Helen.
Hello, John. I have a friend who possesses amazing grace and is one of the finest people on the planet. And I was just down visiting with them last few days ago, actually, and I'd been through another challenging moment in my life and shared that with them, and then sort of moved on. And my friend later on, a day or so later, remarked about how well I handled adversity and how I was able to laugh and move on. And I said to my friend, but Bob, you are always smiling and always laughing, and you've been through so much. And he says, yes, but you seem to have to deal with so much more. And the remarkable thing about this is that my friend Bob has 3 to 6 months to live. And he thinks that I deal well with adversity. And he's the one who lives with grace every day. And, we just always talk about how Bob is always Bob. It's just, he doesn't suffer loudly. He lives with grace. And it's just, I'm so blessed to have him as a friend for as long as I do.
It is. So, thank you, Helen. Those types of relationships can really be profound, and it sounds like Bob is just not taking any of it personally, is he?
No,
That's just what's going on.
He's a natural Buddha.
Yeah. So he has that peace.
Yeah.
Good for him. Thank you. Hello, Tim.
Hello, hello everybody. Out of all the all the 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path, I think this one's the hardest to articulate in my view. But it seems from reading and from talking and from going through all the structured classes we've been having that this is the the part that keeps you on the path through right view. Without it, so as we go along through the Eightfold Path, the right intention is the thing that keeps us there. Because if we start reacting to impermanent phenomena, worldly entanglements, and feeding the ego and creating stress, we go back to our breath, we have that intention. That's the right intention to put us back onto the path, the Eightfold Path, to practice our, the Dhamma. So it's almost like the engine of the Dhamma, really, of the Eightfold Path.
Yeah.
It keeps us there. That's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, that's a profound understanding of right intention. Again, they're all of these factors of the Eightfold Path are utterly simple, except when we start applying it to a mind confused by its own views, and then it becomes a bit tricky. But there's the framework of it there for it too. So thank you, Tim. Hello, Mary.
Hey, John. I think you're almost done.
I'm glad you're here. Hello, David.
John. Very early on, I took right intention as a way to protect the preciousness of the mindfulness that I was developing. And it stayed with me, even though I don't know if it was quite right looking back, but I really do see this mindfulness is the development of it all. And of course, the concentration that it takes, again, your intention is to replace ignorance with wisdom. And you have to protect that mindfulness as you go about your life in the real world. So
thank you, David. And you use the word protected. That's the right word to use. As we develop this refined mindfulness, we should treat it as something to protect, because it's everything. It's why we're putting all this effort in, all this right effort, and it's what's going to deliver in the end. So we should protect it. The triple refuge is often called the three jewels too. Taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Those are the three jewels, aren't they? So thank you. I'm going to go over to Julia, because Julia is always last. So tonight you're not. Hello, Julia.
I was going to say, John, thank you. Thank you for the teaching, and I really enjoyed it. I was going to take Noble Silence today. Sorry, guys. I know you were waiting for me to say something.
I'll never give that admonition again that I gave earlier.
It's only every couple of years.
No,
That's
you know,
right.
because it was like so, like this lesson was so like all encompassing that there's nothing really to say. It's all been said, really.
It is pretty.
It's very profound. So,
I agree. Thank you, Julia. Hello, Michael.
Hi, John. I'm going to go with Noble Silence also.
Yay. All right. Andrew, you have 45 minutes. Good to see you.
It was a significant teaching. I love pulling out of it simple ideas that I can remember later on, simple things. And you mentioned that stress siphons strength, which can lead to sickness. And that is something I can easily remember, and it's mitigated by right view and right intention, among the others. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing it and commenting on it. But that's really true. That's the recognizing and abandoning our contributions to dukkha and stops our own contributions to our own dis-ease and disease. It's just that way. Hello, Bonnie.
Hello, John. Every time we go over each of these lessons, it just deepens my understanding, and sometimes it's really clear, and sometimes it gets clouded, but it gets clearer and clearer about how to apply it. And for me, it's always view has to come first, because our intention, our speech, our action, effort and all of that, if I can't see how I'm clinging or craving, then I can't, my intention is useless.
Yeah.
I can have all the great intentions of wanting to be different or behave differently, but unless I can see it and name it, then that gives me the opportunity then to employ all the rest of the framework. But so, because I think that takes some sort of sometimes courage to be able to really be able to.
Oh yeah, sure it
You're
does.
surrounded by people who help you, remind you, it's mental fabrication, whatever. But so anyway, it's grateful for the path.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. And that recognition is what Anthony DeMello was talking about. We first have to be aware of what needs to be changed, and continue with that intention to actually change it, to let it go. So thank you. Kate, good to see you tonight. How are you?
I'm good. The meditation tonight, I had this thought that, that's why we focus on breath, is because breath comes and goes. And that's why we focus on breath, so that the thoughts can come and go, just like my breath does. I'm not going to have a breath and say, that's the one I want to keep.
But we do that with thoughts, don't we? With all of our thoughts.
Yeah. And the thing that's been coming up for me over and over and over again, many times during the day, is choice. I'm choosing what to think about. I'm choosing to hold on to this or let go of that. And a lot of times I'm driving, especially today, I was thinking about it because I knew I was coming here. I was thinking about it and I would think, be present, because I'm thinking about this, or I'm thinking about the past or the future, or what I'm going to do next week, and just be. And I would keep reminding myself to just be. And my meditations are getting more peaceful. So it's things are just, and I'm trying to figure out how to maintain this practice while I'm interacting with my clients who are just self-harming and just, we hold out something to someone and we say, I swear this is better. What you're doing right now, you're killing yourself. If you do this, I swear you're going to feel better. It's going to be better for you. And the person goes, nah, I got this. Yeah. And I have to let go of that. Yeah. I have to, for myself and for the people that I'm working with. Because I understand that this particular man wants to make his own choices because that's what he wants to do. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Kate. And so you're gaining an understanding both of what the results of your own ignorance, and you're now able to see it in others. And
I see how my ignorance can have a negative effect on them.
Well, and you also mentioned that as you deepen your practice, as your integration of the Eightfold Path deepens, you will naturally bring that understanding to everything you do, not just in work. And it's just that way. In 4 or 5 weeks, I can't remember exactly how long you've been coming, you've developed a remarkable. Your third week?
I missed a couple of weeks.
I got to charge you more money because you're in 3 weeks, you've developed a profound understanding and an experience of the Dhamma working in your life. That is remarkable to see it that way. To know that, to use your words, all you have to do is be. That's pretty simplistic, but it really is true. That ultimately all we're doing is learning how to be in the world without me or the world needing to be any different than it is. And every time we take a breath, that impermanent breath, the arising and the passing away, we're having that direct experience of impermanence. Again, that's a profound understanding to see the breath in that way, as as both a metaphor for impermanence and a direct experience of impermanence, because it is, isn't it? That's why the Buddha taught that single meditation method, because our breath is always there. When we're mindful of it, it unites our mind and our body. And guess what? We can't hold on to it, can we? We can't cling to our breath, but we can certainly cling to thoughts and fabrications. So when I'm stuck in a thought or a fabrication, I come back to the one thing I can't cling to. Wonderful class. Thank you all. So you will, next week we're moving into week 5, the virtuous factors of the Eightfold Path. You will read that and report to me next week on it. I thought there was something I had to say, but I can always say it in email. I don't remember. Come on, go back. Stop. That's like that.
It's not an answer sketch.
There it is. It's not. It looks like it. Let's see. I think I still have mine around. We'll finish with Metta, as long as I can get it up here, like we always do. So again, find your meditative posture and state. Become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on Metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class. Peace. Thank you for joining online, Ted. See you, Jane.
Thank you, John.
Good night, John.
Take care, Ted.